A young doctor had moved out to a small community to replace a doctor who was retiring. The older doctor suggested that the young one accompany him on his rounds so the community could become used to a new doctor. At the first house, a woman complains, "I've been a little sick to my stomach." The older doctor says, "Well, you've probably been overdoing the fresh fruit. Why not cut back on the amount you've been eating and see if that does the trick?" As they left, the younger man said, "You didn't even examine that woman? How'd you come to the diagnosis so quickly?" "I didn't have to. You noticed I dropped my stethoscope on the floor in there? When I bent over to pick it up, I noticed a half-dozen banana peels in the trash. That was probably what was making her sick." "Huh," the younger doctor said. "Pretty clever. I think I'll try that at the next house." Arriving at the next house, they spent several minutes talking with a younger woman. She complained that she just didn't have the energy she once did and said, "I'm feeling terribly run down lately." "You've probably been doing too much work for the church," the younger doctor told her. "Perhaps you should cut back a bit and see if that helps." As they left, the elder doctor said, "I know that woman well. Your diagnosis is almost certainly correct, but how did you arrive at it?" "I did what you did at the last house. I dropped my stethoscope, and when I bent down to retrieve it, I noticed the preacher under the bed." Two Irish nuns had just stepped off a ship, setting foot in America for the very first time. As they looked around in amazement, one of them leaned over and whispered, "I've heard people in this country actually eat dogs." Her companion raised an eyebrow and said calmly, "Well, if we're going to live among them, we should try to fit in." Moments later, they spotted a street vendor selling hot dogs. Taking a deep breath, they approached. "2 dogs, please," one nun said politely. The vendor grinned, wrapped them up, and handed them over. The sisters quickly found a bench nearby, curious but slightly nervous. The Mother Superior opened her foil slowly. Her eyes widened, her cheeks flushed. She stared in silence for a moment, then leaned toward the other nun and whispered in a hushed voice, "Dear Lord, which part did you get?" An old fellow walking down the road and sees a frog sitting in the grass. The frog says, "Hey there, if you kiss me, I will turn into a beautiful woman for you." The old man picks up the frog and puts it in his shirt pocket and keeps on down the road. About a mile down the road, the frog looks up at him and says, "Aren't you going to kiss me?" The old man says, "No, I don't think so." The frog says, "Don't you want a beautiful woman?" The old man responds, "At my age, I would rather have a talking frog." Bob took Jenny to a fancy restaurant for their anniversary. "Order anything you want," Bob said proudly, "as long as it's under $10. The waiter arrived. Jenny smiled. "I'll have the steak." Bob nearly swallowed his dentures. "Steak? That costs more than my first car." Jenny fired back, "That car lasted 1 week. I've survived you for 50 years. When the bill came, Bob stared in horror. "We could have gone on a cruise for this price." Jenny patted his hand. "Yes, and you'd still complain there too." A lifeguard sees a physically handicapped child come up to the public pool. So the lifeguard gets ready to jump in and make a rescue as he sees the kid clumsily put down his towel to go for a swim. As soon as the handicapped boy touches the water, he starts swimming with athletic ease, going 1 lap crawl, the other butterfly, back and forth, back and forth. The lifeguard can't believe his eyes and starts timing him, noticing he's practically beating world records. So he decides to go up to the kid and ask how it's possible, while he tries to dry himself up with his arms all crooked. So the kid replies, "Well, it's pretty simple. Every day, my father used to take me to the middle of the lake on his rowboat, and he'd throw me overboard, and I'd have to swim back to shore." The lifeguard replies, "OMG, that must have been a very hard experience." The kid quickly says, "Wasn't that bad. The hard part was to swim while trying to get out of the bag and dodging the paddle swings." After a meeting several days ago, I couldn't find my keys. I quickly gave myself a personal TSA pat-down. They weren't in my pockets. Suddenly I realized I must have left them in the car. Frantically, I headed for the parking lot. My husband has scolded me many times for leaving my keys in the car's ignition. He's afraid that the car could be stolen. As I looked around the parking lot, I realized he was right. The parking lot was empty. I immediately called the police. I gave them my location, confessed that I had left my keys in the car, and that it had been stolen. Then I made the most difficult call of all, to my husband. I left my keys in the car, and it's been stolen. There was a moment of silence. I thought the call had been disconnected, but then I heard his voice. "Are you kidding me?" he barked. "I dropped you off." Now it was my turn to be silent. Embarrassed, I said, "Well, can you come and get me?" He retorted, "I will, as soon as I convince this cop that I didn't steal your car." Welcome to the golden years. After 4 decades together, a couple finally decided to see a relationship expert. The session began with the wife taking a deep breath and then unloading like a burst dam. She detailed years of feeling invisible, ignored, emotionally starved, and treated more like furniture than a partner. It went on so long the husband checked his watch twice. When she finally ran out of steam, the counselor calmly stood up, walked over, gently lifted her to her feet, pulled her close, and gave her a slow, movie-worthy kiss. The room went silent. The wife sat back down, stunned and speechless. The counselor turned to the husband and said, That's what she needs regularly. 3 times a week would be ideal." The husband nodded thoughtfully and replied, "I can bring her in Tuesdays and Thursdays, Fridays I'm playing golf." This 89-year-old woman was arrested for shoplifting. When she went before the judge in Cincinnati, he asked her, "What did you steal?" She replied, "A can of peaches." The judge asked her why she had stolen the can of peaches, and she replied that she was hungry. Then the judge asked her how many peaches were in the can. She replied, 6. The judge said, "Then I will give you 6 days in jail." Before the judge could actually pronounce the punishment, the woman's husband spoke up and asked the judge if he could say something on his wife's behalf. The judge said, "What is it?" The husband said, "She also stole a can of peas." 2 bosses were talking about how dumb their blonde assistants are. The first boss says, "You think your assistant is dumb? Watch this." And the man calls over the blonde and says, "Go to my house and see if I'm home." So the blonde says, "Yes, sir, right away, sir," and away she goes. The second boss says, "You call that dumb? Watch this." So he calls over his blonde assistant and says, "Here's a dime, go buy me a car." She replies, "Yes, sir, no problem," and away the blonde goes. On their way to go do the tasks given to them, they meet up and start talking. The first blonde says, "My boss is so stupid. He told me to go to his house and see if he's home. I mean, why couldn't he just call and see if he's home? Ugh, the nerve." The second blonde says, "You think that's dumb? My boss gave me a dime to go buy him a car. Honestly, he didn't even tell me what kind or color he wanted." Pat, his wife, and his 9-year-old son went on shopping in Dublin for the first time. Pat and his son were totally amazed by everything they saw, but it's the shiny silver wall that opened and closed that caught their attention. The boy asked his father what it was, and the father said, "Son, I have never seen anything like this before." While Pat and his son were staring in amazement, a fat old lady came to the moving wall and pressed the button. The walls opened, and the lady placed herself between them. The walls closed, and they watched the numbers above. They continued to watch until it reached the last number, and then started to light in reverse order. The door opened, and the young blonde stepped out. Pat, not taking his eyes off the young woman, said quietly to his son, "Go get your mother." A Marine returns from duty in Iraq and is immediately reassigned to a remote location in Afghanistan. That evening, he arrives at his new post, a run-down mosque in the middle of nowhere. As he switches over with the Marine currently stationed there, he realizes there is no bed, no clean water, no toilet, just him, his weapon, and the dirt on the floor. The next morning, he wakes up to find a queue of naked men leading into the mosque. At the front, the mosque leader is in prayer with the man leading the line. As the prayer finishes, he drops to his knees and swings his fist into the naked guy's balls, flooring him. The naked guy slowly comes to his senses and crawls out of the mosque. Confused, the Marine asks the mosque leader what's going on. These men are thieves, rapists, and murderers from all over Afghanistan, he says. Instead of prison, their punishment is to walk through the desert in nothing but their sandals, receive Allah's justice, then return home. The Marine returns to his post and continues to watch these unusual punishments. After 6 long months of no bed, no clean water, no toilet, and witnessing this unusual justice system, his replacement arrives. "Hey, my last post was in Korea. How is it here?" asks the replacement. "And what's with this queue of naked guys in the middle of nowhere?" "Well, I'll be honest with you," replies the Marine. "This is a post, and what you're looking at here is a criminal punchline." A man and woman, both married separately, had to share a room one night on a business trip. They feel weird at first, but they both fall asleep in their separate beds. After a few hours of sleeping, the man wakes the woman up and asks her, "Could you grab me another blanket from the closet? I'm really cold." The woman responds, "Or we could just pretend to be married for the night." The man replies, "That would be amazing." The woman smiles and says, "Okay, get your own blanket." It was a dark winter night in the Scottish Orkney Islands. Angus's wife was very pregnant and ready to pop. "Go fetch the doctor, Angus," she cried. Off he went, trekking through snow and rain for over an hour. When Angus and the doctor finally returned, the fire was nearly out and the room was freezing. "Stoke the fire, Angus," the doctor ordered. As the room lit up, Angus's wife screamed, and the doctor shouted, "Oh aye, the head is crowning." Moments later, a beautiful baby boy was born. Angus proudly wrapped the baby and showed him to his wife, but the fire began to die down again. He stoked it hotter than before. Suddenly, another scream. "Angus, it's twins! There's another head!" Before he could blink, a second baby boy arrived. "2 strong boys!" Angus shouted proudly. Once again, the fire dimmed. "Angus, I can't see," the doctor said. Angus stoked a fire, and instantly another scream filled the room. "It's not twins, it's triplets!" A beautiful baby girl was born. "That's a whole family," Angus beamed. Then the fire dimmed yet again. Without hesitation, Angus stoked it once more. As the light returned, his wife screamed again. The doctor stared in disbelief. "Angus, there is another head." Angus paused, scratched his head, and said, "Another one, you say? You think maybe the light's attracting them?" A blonde gets a job as a physical education teacher for 16 to 18-year-olds. She notices a boy at the end of the field standing alone, while all the other kids are running around, having fun, kicking a football. She takes pity on him and decides to speak to him. "Are you okay?" she asks. "Yes," he replies. "You can go play with the other kids, you know," she said. "It would be better if I stayed here," he says. "Why's that, sweetie?" asks the blonde. The boy looks at her incredulously and says, "Because I'm the goalkeeper." A young blonde woman goes to an office for an interview. The interviewer decides to start with the basics. "So, miss, can you tell us your age, please?" he asks. The blonde counts carefully on her fingers for about 3 seconds before saying, 25. The interviewer tries another straightforward one to break the ice. "And can you tell us your height, please?" The young lady stands up and produces a measuring tape from her handbag. Then she traps one end under her foot and extends the tape to the top of her head. She checks the measurement and announces 5'3". This isn't looking good, so the interviewer goes into the real basics of the interview. And just to confirm our records, your name, please? The blonde moves her head side to side for about 20 seconds, mouthing something silently to herself, before replying, Stephanie. The interviewer is completely baffled at this point and asks, just out of curiosity, miss, we can understand you're counting on your fingers to work out your age, and the measuring tape for your height is obvious, but what were you doing when we asked you your name? Oh, that, replies the blonde. That's just me running through happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you. A farmer goes for the interview, and then this happened. Interviewer, how much milk do these cows give? Farmer, which one, the black one or the brown one? Interviewer, brown one. Farmer, a couple of liters per day. Interviewer, and the black one? Farmer, a couple of liters per day. Interviewer, naturally a bit flummoxed, I see. What do you give them to eat? Farmer, which one, black or brown? Interviewer, black. Farmer, it eats grass. Interviewer, and the other one? Farmer, grass. Interviewer, now annoyed, why do you keep asking which one when the answers are the same? Farmer, because the black one's mine. Interviewer, oh, and the brown one? Farmer, it's also mine. This redneck was parked behind a trailer load of pigs near the zoo in Washington, D.C. As the truck drove away, one of the pigs fell out. The redneck walked over and picked the pig up and placed it in the front seat of his truck. He was sitting there looking puzzled when a policeman walked up and asked what was going on. He told the story, and the policeman recommended he take the pig to the zoo. The redneck was sitting in the same spot the next day with the pig sitting up in the front seat. The cop said, "Didn't I ask you to take this pig to the zoo?" The redneck replied, "I did, and he liked it so well, today I'm taking him to the movies." A man is trapped on a desert island with a sheep and a dog. After a few months, the sheep starts looking really attractive to the man. However, whenever he approaches the sheep, the dog begins to growl in a threatening manner. The man takes the dog to the opposite side of the island, giving it some food as a distraction. He runs back to the sheep, only to find the dog growling at him. The man ties the dog to a tree with a large leash. He goes back to the sheep, only to find the dog growling with a gnawed-off leash around its neck. By now, the man is getting depressed and frustrated. As he sits under a palm tree staring out to sea, a beautiful woman in a tight-fitting wetsuit emerges from the surf. She asks him who he is and, taking pity upon his lonely state, asks if there's anything she could do for him. The man thinks for a moment and then responds, "Could you take the dog for a walk?" A 70-year-old woman decided to stay at an expensive hotel for her birthday. The next morning, she was appalled when the desk clerk gave her a bill for $250. She wanted to know why the charge was too high. "It's a nice hotel, but the rooms certainly aren't worth $250 for just an overnight stay. I didn't even have breakfast," she told the clerk. The clerk clarified that $250 is the standard price. At that point, the older lady insisted on talking with the manager. The manager introduced himself and explained that the hotel has an Olympic-sized swimming pool and a huge conference center, which are available for use. "But I didn't use them," the old woman said. "Well, they're there, and you could have," he replied. The manager proceeded by saying that she could likewise have seen one of the in-hotel shows for which the hotel is famous. "We have the best entertainers from the world over performing here," he said. "But I didn't go to any of those shows," she said. The manager replied, "Well, we have them, and you could have." Regardless of what facility he recommended, the older lady would just answer, "But I didn't use it." The manager then replied with his standard reaction. After arguing with him for several minutes, she decided to pay. The manager was shocked when she handed him the check. "But ma'am, this check is only $50, he said. "That's right. I charged you $200 for sleeping with me," replied the old lady. "But I didn't," the manager shouted. "Well, too bad. I was here and you could have," the old woman replied. Don't mess with senior citizens. They spent a lifetime learning the skills. For 3 years, the young attorney had been taking his brief vacations at this country inn. The last time he finally managed an affair with the innkeeper's daughter. Looking forward to an exciting few days, he dragged his suitcase up the stairs of the inn, then stopped short. There sat his lover with an infant on her lap. "Helen, why didn't you write when you learned you were pregnant?" he cried. "I would have rushed up here. We could have gotten married, and the baby would have my name." "Well," she said, "when my folks found out about my condition, we sat up all night talking and decided it would be better to have a beard in the family than a lawyer." An old woman, Grandma Edna, went to the doctor for her annual checkup. The doctor, trying to make polite conversation, asked, "Mrs. Edna, how are you feeling these days?" "Oh, I'm feeling just fine, doctor," she said. "But I do have one little problem. I seem to be passing gas quite a bit. It's nothing too bad. They're silent and they don't smell at all. In fact, I've probably passed gas about 10 times just sitting here talking to you, but you'd never know because they're completely harmless." The doctor smiled, nodded, and scribbled something on his notepad. "All right, Mrs. Edna, I'm going to give you these pills. Take them twice a day and come back in a week." A week later, Edna walked into the office, arms crossed and looking furious. "Doctor, I don't know what those pills did, but now my gas smells terrible." The doctor looked up, grinning. "Great! Now that we've fixed your sense of smell, let's work on your hearing." A businessman and his lover raced across town on their lunch break to have a hotel room quickie. They burst into the hotel room, dive halfway onto the bed, and furiously get to it, so quickly her legs were hanging off the side of the bed. Afterwards, they were lying on the bed quietly when he asked her, "When we were having this time, why were your legs kicking up in the air so fast?" She said, "You were in such a hurry, I couldn't get off my pantyhose."